Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Tragic loss. The Chase's Anne Hegerty passes away suddenly at age 65. Broken our hearts, this news. Must see. Opening scene, soft music fades in, a studio light flickers on. The Chase theme glimmers quietly in the background. Narrator, warm British tone. Anne Hegerty, the governess, the woman who has stood tall in front of countless contestants, her brain sharper than steel, her wit dry as toast. But on one unforgettable afternoon at the ITV studios, Anne wasn't just chasing, she was being cheekily challenged by her own co-star. What happened next? A spontaneous showdown, a shocking question, and a reaction that left the audience, and even Bradley Walsh, speechless. Was it rivalry? Was it humour? Or was it something deeper? A glimpse into the bond behind the buzzing buttons and ruthless quizzing. Cut to slow zoom on Anne's iconic stare. Narrator, join us as we journey into one of the most talked about behind-the-scenes moments in the Chase's history. A moment that tested the mind and tugged at the heart. This is the true creative tale of the day Anne Hegerty got asked the most blunt question of her career after beating her own teammate. Segment 1. The setup. A quiet day on set. Visual. ITV studios from the outside. Staff walking in. The studios buzz with routine chatter. Narrator. It was a day like any other in the hallowed halls of ITV. The studio's warmth buzzed with routine. Cue cards fluttering, cameras rolling, Bradley Walsh sharing a joke about custard creams. Anne arrived early, calm and professional, wearing her signature navy suit and that unmistakable air of authority. But what the crew didn't know was that a special celebrity rehearsal was planned. One of the newer chasers, Dara Ennis, known affectionately as the Menace, was to face Anne in a friendly fire segment, a sparring of titans. Producers thought it would be light-hearted, a bit of fun for B-roll footage. But once Anne entered the stage and saw Dara at the opposite podium, the game face was on. Segment 2. The face-off. Friendly fire turns fierce. Visual. Anne and Dara locking eyes across the stage. Bradley sipping tea nervously. Narrator. Bradley, ever the ringmaster, could feel the temperature change. Anne wasn't here to play soft. Dara smirked, thinking he might get the upper hand. After all, he'd been flying high on fan praise since joining the team. But Anne had been here since day one, and she knew how to dismantle an ego. "Ready when you are, darling," Anne quipped, her voice velvet and vinegar. Dara chuckled, but the first question dropped. He stumbled. Anne pounced. 3 questions in, and the score was 3-0 to Anne. Bradley leaned back, eyes wide. The crew stopped chewing biscuits. This wasn't a friendly, this was a masterclass. Segment 3. The turning point. Dara's misstep. Visual. Dara looking momentarily flustered. Anne smirked subtly. Narrator. By the 4th question, something unusual happened. Dara, normally composed, blurted an incorrect answer to a geography question. Anne's smile grew, not smug, not cruel, but like a headmistress watching a pupil who didn't revise. "Oh dear, Dara, I thought you were the scientist," she said. Laughter echoed, but there was a slight flush on Dara's cheeks. He laughed too, but his eyes showed a flicker of something else, respect and a bit of frustration. By round's end, Anne had dominated. The governess had claimed the metaphorical crown once again. Bradley applauded. Dara walked over to her podium, clapped her on the shoulder, and that's when it happened. Segment 4. The blunt question. How do you do it? Visual. Studio in stunned silence. A boom mic subtly picks up Dara's question. Narrator. In a moment of genuine candor, perhaps one part admiration, one part exasperation, Dara looked Anne dead in the eye and said, "Anne, how do you do it? Seriously, how do you keep beating us?" The crew froze. A question so blunt, so raw, it wasn't meant for telly, it was meant from one brain to another. Anne, ever composed, blinked. Then she softly laughed, Not the sharp, curt chuckle she offers contestants, but a warm, knowing laugh, one rarely seen. "I read," she said. "A lot. I read everything. The trick is not to know the answers, it's to know how the questions think." Segment 5. Behind the question. The real Dara Ennis. Visual. Dara in a quiet corridor post-filming, sipping water thoughtfully. Narrator. To understand why Dara's question hit so hard, you need to know the man behind the menace. Dara Ennis may be the youngest of the chasers, but he's no rookie, a neuroscientist by trade and a quizzer by passion. He came to the chase after impressing as a contestant. He was driven, focused, and more than a little competitive. He didn't expect to win that mock round necessarily, but he hadn't expected to be crushed either. That was the shock. That was the reason the question, though blunt, came from a place of curiosity, maybe even admiration. In that quiet moment, it wasn't just two quizzers chatting. It was a master and apprentice dynamic, one brain wondering what makes the other so unstoppable. And Anne, without fanfare or fuss, simply revealed it's about outlasting, not outperforming, wisdom layered in experience. Segment 6. Anne's hidden world, strength beyond the podium. Visual. Archive photos of Anne from early chaser days, mixed with shots of her in libraries and reading rooms. Narrator. What many forget is that Anne Hegerty's brilliance didn't arrive overnight. Born in Westminster, Anne grew up battling not just tough quiz questions, but her own internal challenges. Diagnosed with autism in her mid-40s, she spent much of her life learning how to live, adapt, and rise. Her knowledge earned, her presence built. Her place on the chase was fought for with every ounce of intellect and perseverance. So when Dara asked her that blunt question, "How do you do it?" he was not just asking how she knew the answer to a Shakespeare play. He was, perhaps unknowingly, asking how she overcame the odds. Anne's response wasn't arrogance, it was honesty. "I read, I prepare, I endure." And for many fans watching the moment, it revealed something tender beneath the iron exterior. Segment 7. Bradley Walsh reacts. Humour in the heart of it all. Visual. Bradley replaying the moment in the green room, mug in hand, laughing with producers. Narrator. Now, if there's one person who always sees the human side of the chasers, it's Bradley Walsh. After the segment wrapped, Bradley walked into the green room shaking his head with that boyish grin we all know so well. "Did you see her face?" he said. "Anne just went full samurai." Bradley may play the cheeky fool, but he sees everything. And in that moment, he recognized not just Anne's dominance, but the quiet humility that came after. "She doesn't just know facts," he said. "She feels the rhythm of the quiz. That's why she wins." He even joked with Dara, "Don't worry, mate. I've been getting beaten by her in the green room quiz for 15 years. It broke the tension. Laughter filled the room, but there was no denying the reverence in Bradley's voice. Segment 8. The crew's response. Reverence behind the cameras. Visual. Cameraman and crew sharing stories, smiling as they pack up gear. Narrator. As the studio lights dimmed and the crew began their nightly teardown, whispers of Anne's performance rippled through the sound stages. "She's in a league of her own," one sound technician said. That wasn't quizzing, that was artistry. Even the lighting operator, who usually dozes during mid-rounds, was seen leaning forward wide-eyed. It's easy to forget that these moments, small to the viewer, can be monumental to those behind the scenes. Watching Anne work, they said, was like watching a conductor lead an orchestra. Calm, calculated, effortless. And yet they all knew it was anything but effortless. They respected Dara for asking the question, and they revered Anne for how she answered it. Segment 9. Quiet reflection. A moment alone. Visual. Anne walking alone through the quiet ITV corridors post-show. Coat slung over her shoulder. Narrator. After the applause faded and the crew dispersed, Anne walked alone through the quiet corridors of the ITV building. She wasn't one for post-show chatter or basking in praise. Her victories to her were simply part of the job. But in her dressing room mirror, she paused, not out of vanity, but reflection. Maybe Dara's question stayed with her. Maybe she'd heard it before from friends, fans, or even strangers online. But today it felt different, because it wasn't about ego, it was about recognition. And for Anne Hegerty, who had spent decades fighting to be heard, seen, and respected, that quiet, blunt question may have been the sincerest form of admiration she had received in years. Segment 10, Dara's Quiet Gesture, the book. Visual, a brown paper-wrapped book left outside Anne's dressing room door with a small card. Narrator, the next morning, before Anne returned to the studio, a small package arrived at her door. Inside, a book, The Art of War.